Did you see anything unusual?
Hello, this is PJ Souls from Halloween and Innocent Prey and Carrie and totally a lot of other movies. And you are listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to this Halloween month of, Halloween stuff. It is Halloween's coming up. All very excited, of course. The air is turning crisp and the knives are being sharpened behind pumpkins. And we're covering this time Halloween 2018. So the return, one of the many returns of Laurie Strode to the Halloween franchise and Jamie Lee Curtis. So this film obviously came out, 3 years ago. And it's going to be interesting to revisit it because I saw it originally in Spanish at a Spanish cinema. So I had caught it up once on streaming since then, but I hadn't seen this for a couple of years. So it's going to be interesting to chat about this one. It's all Halloween all month. So Erik, have you got your pumpkins out?
I actually do.
Do you?
Mm.
Ah. So have you been able to persuade your significant other of watching horror movies?
No, it's one thing he can never be enticed to. Toya Records, yes. Horror movies, no.
Well, that's horror enough for anyone. Joseph, you're full of the fall.
Full of something, all right.
Mm.
It's not fall air. Well, it's probably come in with a fall air. If you're listening to this, and I'm sure you are, because everyone listens to this, I'm very sick, but I'm gonna pull through for Halloween 2018, I guess.
Come on, enthusiasm, Joseph.
Yes, enthusiasm. Okay, here we go. Let's do this.
Okay. And Nathan isn't with us this time, still on sabbatical, but we hope to have him back on the show very, very soon. So before we get on to the main feature, let's see what we've been watching recently. So, Erik, is anything you've seen recently?
No.
Okay. Well, as Joseph requested to go last because to preserve his singing voice, his fine singing voice, the only thing I've been watching is the new season of Slasher, Flesh and Bone.
Is it Flesh and Bone or Flesh and Blood?
Oh, Flesh and Blood. I'm just thinking of bones.
Of course you are, you dirtbag.
Flesh and Blood. And so it's kind of been hopping around the stations, I kind of guess, or networks or whatever. And the last one or couple were on Netflix, and this one I think is on, is it FX or is what? Anyway, it's on, Shudder. It's a Shudder original, of course. I'm not going to spoil it because Joseph, have you seen any episodes yet?
No, I waited till the show was over because they were playing them once a week, and I kind of like to binge stuff like this, so I got it queued up, but I haven't started it yet.
I like to binge Twixes.
We know that. I won't give any spoilers. Just to say that if you're familiar with the Slasher franchise, it's kind of it's a series. It's a limited series in so much that it's always a different story, and I don't think any of them connect really. But they do have a kind of a house cast that many of them. Many of the actors and actresses that appear in them appear as different characters in the different seasons, and it's the same with this one. Now, this one, I think you were excited because it kind of had reminiscent of Harper's Island, which was a slasher TV series from 10 years ago? Is that about that?
12 years ago, I think. Wow.
Okay, which of so this is very reminiscent of that in so much that, again, there's going to be no spoilers, but it's the basic story is a patriarch played by David Cronenberg in a rather creaky role, I must say, gets his family together, and they have a history of playing rather dangerous games on this island. And he gets them back together, and he basically starts this kind of dangerous games tournament. And they are joined by a slasher who's kind of dressed, I kind of guess, got like dressed as a kind of what they call someone who attends funerals, when they, someone who walks behind the hearse with a kind of almost like a sort of a white
widows.
Is it the parlor director? Maybe.
Well, somebody who walks behind, he's got a top hat, and they walk kind of. I can't remember the name for them, but anyway, he's dressed in like
Sharon, Susan. Is that what they're called?
They haven't revealed the identity of the killer yet, so I can't. As ever, of course, it's a whodunit. But the slasher is also on the island. Of course, it could be one of the family there, and presumably it is, because otherwise it's going to be a bit of a cheat. And as with the others, you get the intrigue, kind of obituary, the kind of especially in this dynamic of families warring over a fortune, and usually at least one or two gory murders an episode. So it's very much similar to the others. With this, it's almost, I think it's kind of tipping almost into parody. And I say I'm not really going to give anything away, but you have scenes where you have people stabbing or biting off each other's fingers and then making or mourning over the death of someone, one scene, and then teaching someone to make an omelette in the next scene. So it's kind of very broad, but if you're over the top theatrics, some kind of bitchy dialogue and wood chipper murders, then you could do worse. So I think it'd be interesting to see what you think, Joseph, when you get round to it.
Yeah, I didn't care for the first season. I thought the second season was amazing. The third season I thought was just kind of okay, but this one had that kind of April Fool's Day, Harper's Island thing going for it. But now you're painting it as this kind of broad comedy. I'm like, I'm a little weary, but I'm still going to watch it.
At some point you get into a franchise or whatever, and it feels like they're not playing it for laughs exactly, but it's just very over the top. I mean, to be honest, the last one, wasn't it? One set in the apartment block was pretty over the top. But again, it's certainly, if you're a fan of the franchise and if you're a fan of slasher movies, which of course, if you're listening to this, you probably are, then, it's maybe worth your time. It's only halfway through, so we'll see. I'm sure we'll revisit it when you've had a chance to watch it, Joseph.
Well, as far, not as far as plot, but like the slasher type stuff, how is that so far? Is it like pretty good or?
Well, the gore is good, but I would say, and I don't know if this is just because it's halfway through the season, is the slasher stuff seems to be a little bit of an afterthought in this. Literally, the slasher will turn up for 5 minutes, if 3-4 minutes of each episode, and the rest of it will be the games and the family at war and cat fights and people and flashbacks and things like that. So. Unless it kind of steps it up, I think the slasher element of this is played down quite significantly from some of the other previous series, so which is a little bit disappointing. But again, they might pick that up a little bit later, and obviously there will be some kind of unmasking, and we find out who the killer is. So I'm sure that'll be lots of fun. But yeah. So that's all I've really been seeing, actually, because and obviously we can't announce it at the moment, but we are working on a number of commentaries. So a lot of our time's been taken up with that. What we can announce, of course, is that there's just been announced Vinegar Syndrome. We had the pleasure of doing a commentary for Nothing Underneath, the 1986, 85, 86 Shallow. From Carlo Vanzina, from which we covered on the podcast not that long ago, but it's one of our favourites, and we had a blast doing that one. Obviously, Death Screams is out on Arrow at the moment, another one we had a blast on, and there's a few that we've got in the bag. Again, we can't announce them.
Another one that no one's really talking about that's out recently was Shallow Grave.
Yes, another Vinegar Syndrome one. Again, it's a film that I reviewed on Hysteria Lives. I don't think we've done a show on it, have we? But that was a fun one to do a commentary for, because if you've not seen Shallow Grave, it's very much a film of two halves. It starts off as a kind of relatively fluffy, almost kind of teen college sort of sorority break kind of comedy, and takes a very dark left turn about halfway through. That's definitely worth your time. Also, just going to mention, we're on Patreon this month. Again, we say it's all Halloween all the time. We're going to be recording our Halloween 3 show, the much maligned, but often much misunderstood second sequel to Halloween. Of course, was it a sequel or... Well, we'll talk about that. Anyway, if you're interested in hearing our thoughts on that,
it's not a sequel.
Well, join us over on Patreon. And what else we got this month on Patreon? We've got top 3 of 1994, 5?
Yeah, it's 1994, I believe. Yeah, because we just did 1993.
Yeah, and also we'll be doing another Fango flashback. I'm not sure we've chosen the...
Yes, it's from 1989, so we're going to the opposite end of the decade from the last one.
But again, with Halloween connections.
Yes, there is a big article on the various different incarnations of the shape inside this, and it's got Michael Myers from Halloween 5 on the front cover.
Excellent. Okay, and so that will be. We've had a lot of fun talking about those. So yeah, just sort of join us over on Patreon, and you can listen for as little as $1 a month. So you'll definitely get your money's worth. So, and Joseph, what have you been watching? Anything caught your attention?
Yeah, the only thing I've seen this week was Lucky. It was from 2020. It's a sort of a slasher home invasion thriller. And I thought it was like another take on the whole time loop thing, but that's not what this is exactly. Did either of you guys watch that?
No.
No, but it's. I was waiting to hear what you thought of it.
Yeah, so what it does is it's not a time loop thriller. It kind of is, but it swaps time for like this like cyclical violence against women, and the slasher stuff is used as sort of a crutch to tell this morality tale of a woman who comes to realize that no matter what she does, the same masked intruder will continue to break into her home every night and attempt to kill her. And everyone in her life is so blasé about it. You know, they gaslight her at every turn, and they adapt that whole, you're just be thankful you're alive attitude, hence the title, Lucky. Or they just say, be lucky you're alive. Rather than deal with the problem head on because, hey, she's a woman. I like the conceit here much more than I like the execution. I think it's a very interesting idea to kind of use that metaphor as a slasher film, how women face danger every day. But like Candyman 2021, the metaphors are really heavy handed, and I don't think the acting is strong enough to support the message. But some of the slasher stuff, like there's one scene where the lead girl, she basically sees her own predicament kind of projected onto other women in this parking garage. And it's a really neat, really well directed scene of, you get all these slashers trying to kill all these women in this, parking garage. And I'm not trying to say that sounds awesome, but it's just the way it's filmed and the way it's kind of tied into her own, problem is just handled well enough. And, I like how time doesn't necessarily loop here, but just the single predicament. So no matter what, you get, variations on the same event with bloodier outcomes each time. But like ultimately, I think it's just, I don't know, it thinks it's smarter than it really is. It kind of talks down to the audience a lot. And I don't know, just like I said, the production value and the acting just doesn't really support the message they're kind of going for. But it's, it's worth a watch, but just go in with some trepidations if I were you.
Okay, well, so it's a kind of a slight recommend.
Yeah, I would recommend it, but like I said, with reservations.
Okay, and I take it, Erik, you've not seen that either.
No, not yet.
Okay, well, thank you, Joseph. Well, let's get on to the main feature. So it's going to be an interesting one to discuss this, and obviously it's going to be interesting to hear what your views as listeners are, and so it'll be interesting to see what the Facebook consensus is. But here is the TV spot for Halloween 2018, and Erik will bring us back in with a description after this.
They're all spooky.
Michael Myers spent the last 40 years in captivity.
I have prayed that he would escape so I can kill him. He's waited for this night. He's here. He's waited for me. Michael!
Rated R.
It's been 40 years since Laurie Strode survived a vicious attack from crazed killer Michael Myers on Halloween night. Locked up in an institution, Myers manages to escape when his bus transfer goes horribly wrong. Laurie now faces a terrifying showdown when the masked madman returns to Haddonfield, Illinois, but this time she's ready for him. So, Halloween 2018 is a film I was fortunate enough to see at a preview screening about 2 weeks, I think, before it opened. It was in Dublin, and we had a very special guest there to do a Q&A afterwards, and it was Miss Jamie Lee Curtis. So it was quite a surreal evening for me, because I'm just not used to having Hollywood celebrities sitting 10 feet away from me. It was really weird, especially somebody like Jamie Lee Curtis, who I've idolized for so long. My first viewing of the film then was very, very positive. In the build up to seeing the film, I kept hearing that it was going to be this thesis on the long-term effects of trauma. And I was beginning to get a bit worried that it was going to veer really off of the established slasher blueprint. So I was really pleasantly surprised when it doesn't, and it is in fact a very straightforward slasher movie. However, I mean, subsequent viewings have revealed its flaws to me. And one of them is sort of in that opening scene in the sanitarium, where it kind of demystifies Michael Myers again by giving him a bit too much backstory and portraying him a bit much as being a regular human, which I don't quite like. I mean, I love the first Halloween film I ever saw was Halloween 2, and that's my favourite version of the Shape, where he's faceless, he doesn't speak, and he sort of glides and just walks around completely emotionless. Whereas at this, it does kind of like what Rob Zombie did with his remake of Halloween, is it kind of gives him a sense of humanity and makes him less scary, in my opinion. So that was my first problem with the film. I did adore the opening credits, though, when they started to roll. They're a real throwback to the opening credits that adorned the first two movies in particular. In this one, we see a pumpkin on the left-hand side of the screen going from rotten to ripe in reverse time-lapse photography, and it's quite effective. And then we have on the right-hand side of the screen, we have the font, the exact same font that they used for the Halloween credits, the orange. I don't know the name of the font. I'm not that way inclined. I'm not a fontist. But it was so retro, and again with the John Carpenter theme playing in the background, it was really tickling my nostalgic bone. But once the credits have finished, I come to my next problem with the film, and that's its portrayal of Laurie Strode. And I'm sure the traumatic effects of the 1978 film would have a significant impact on one's life. But I think if you're making a commercial film, you can play a bit with, the rules of reality, especially when it's a Halloween film. In H2O, which was in 1998, 20 years ago, they sort of were doing the same thing, picking up Laurie Strode's life 20 years later in that case. And whilst she was troubled, she still had the ability to laugh and smile and, just behave as a normal human being. Whereas in this one, she barely breaks a smile for the, 110 minutes, and she seems dour and downbeat and almost aggressive. And whilst it probably is realistic, it doesn't make her a sympathetic character, I don't think. I don't think she's as watchable in this as she was in the original or in H2O. And that's kind of a problem for me, that you just can't engage with her character at all. Plus, she disappears for big chunks of the film as well, which gives the film sort of a strange... It feels kind of lopsided at times, probably. I mean, anytime it breaks off to... focus on the teens who are kind of unlikable, and they, some of them seem to have been parachuted in from Friday the 13th Part 5 or something, because they're quite stupid characters, I think, particularly Allison's boyfriend, who sort of starts snogging somebody else at the school dance for no apparent reason, and then there's that fat kid who tries it on with her in the Elrod's backyard. The film that feels very at odds with everything else that's going on in this film. In terms of Michael himself, I thought once he gets the mask and he's wandering around the streets of Haddonfield, I found those scenes quite effective, particularly where he walks into the house and kills that woman with the claw hammer, and it's kind of a throwback to I think it's Mrs. Elrod from Halloween 2. I mean, there's lots of throwbacks to earlier Halloween films in this. I'm sure we'll mention many of them later. I think the final 30 minutes is really strong, though, with the survivors locked into Laurie's house, her house/fortress. And I love that moment where Karen is feigning helplessness. She's in the basement and she's crying, but in the end it turns out to be a ruse to fool Michael. And that got a big cheer in the cinema when I went to see it. And it's a great character moment. But for me, I mean, Laurie as Linda Hamilton type Terminator 2 joyless character harms the film to a degree. And I'm not sure about the Loomis replacement in this either, the doctor who's obsessed with Michael. I'm not sure how necessary that was or how believable it was, but I still rate the film. I think it has some many enjoyable moments. It's a quantum leap in quality from the two Rob Zombie atrocities, I think. I just wish Michael had more of that mystique he had in the earlier films. Because even though he's behind a mask for much of this film and he never speaks, either there's something about it that he feels too human and too normal for me. And so he doesn't feel as scary. In retrospect, when I came out of this in the cinema in 2018, I said that's the best sequel since Halloween 2. Watching it again, I've seen it about 4 or 5 times at this stage. So after multiple viewings, I think it's probably the best sequel since H2O. I think 1, 2, 5, H2O, and this are my favourite of the series. Just thinking if there's anything I've missed. So it's not quite as high up on my list of favourite Halloween films as it was after the first viewing, because, as I said, repeat viewings reveal its flaws to me. But even with its flaws, it's a great movie, and I'm really looking forward to see what they do with Halloween Kills, even though advanced reviews aren't as enthusiastic as they were for this one. But we'll wait and see. Only another 2 weeks from the time we're recording this till we get to see that film. Justin, as you said, you saw this initially in Spanish, so it probably had a different effect on you than it did to me.
Yeah, well, one of the side effects of seeing it in Spanish, which is quite useful for trying to learn the language, is that Spanish people speak faster than British or American people. So when something's dubbed into Spanish for American, I have to speak slower, so I could understand a fair bit of it in Spanish. But as far as kind of seeing it again this time, I have real mixed feelings about this movie because I want to like it more than I do. I think it's probably a fair assessment. I think there's some really good things in here. A lot of what you said, Erik, I think is on the money. I do kind of wish they'd gone a different route with Jamie Lee Curtis's or Laurie Strode's character, because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a popcorn movie. And it's not disparaging Halloween or any horror movies, but really at the end of the day, it's kind of, that's what the original Halloween was. It was kind of a boo machine. It wasn't making any grand statements. It was about a kind of scary killer on Halloween night chasing babysitters. And again, not putting the movie down, because I love that the whole idea of that. But then it seems like with these films and Halloween Kills, and Halloween Kills is from what I've read is kind of meant to be kind of really sort of looking at kind of mob mentality and sort of that type of thing. And I think it's good to introduce those kind of elements into movies. But I think at the heart of the movie, it still needs to be entertaining. And so with this movie, there's bits I like, and I agree. I think the teens aren't that strong in this. I mean, God knows slasher movies. If you're not looking for a realistic portrayal of teen relationships in slasher movies, but I don't know. They could have been. I've found her best friend. Laurie's granddaughter's best friend. I can't remember her name at the moment. She was quite fun. The babysitter. But I thought the two main teen protagonists is Alison, was Andy Matichak. I didn't really warm to her as a character, and Judy Greer playing Karen. I'd liked her a bit more. I'm going to be interesting to see how they kind of those characters develop in the subsequent 2 movies. As far as kind of one of the things I've seen a lot of people saying they didn't like was the whole podcaster idea of the 2 British true crime podcasters who come to find out more about Michael Myers, and then they meet up with the doctor, who seems like a dead ringer of like Omar Sharif for some reason. But anyway, I didn't mind that. I thought actually it's a kind of clever way of re-establishing the facts and the timeline and everything like that. And of course, it's kind of quite prescient because obviously true crime podcasting has been very big the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So that I didn't mind so much. I think it's just like Michael Myers. I've seen one thing, it's interesting. I've seen some reviews of this movie and they said it's not actually that scary. And I kind of trying to work out, and I was watching it last night with Stuart and he said it's not really scary, is it? And I sort of said, no. And I don't know if that's because it's the repetition, if you repeat something so much, it kind of loses that effect. But some things I noticed this time, that with Michael Myers, one of the things, I take a bit of issue with how they've come back with Michael Myers, that it seems like they're almost hedging their bets, and they took part of Michael Myers, the brutality of the Rob Zombie movies, and put it into this movie and tried to make him almost like a bastard child of Michael Myers from the Carpenter first film and the Rick Rosenthal second film, and then also the Rob Zombie version. Because I know that the guy who played him, and of course it was Nick Castle, I think he only played him for one shot in the movie, which is when you see the reflection in the window and Laurie Strode shoots at him. And it was James Jude Courtney who played the Shape through this. And he was saying he actually kind of he based it on his cat, Parzival the cat, which I think is a great idea because obviously cats are predators and things like that. But for me, it kind of, he also said he did it sort of, he thought, well, how would this character have developed over 40, 50 years or so? And to me, it felt a little bit like, an old man shuffling around the backyards. With a weird kind of mixture of brutality as well. So it didn't have that glide. I think you mentioned the glide, Erik, and it didn't have that. And the other things I noticed, there's no point of view from Michael Myers, which both Halloween and Halloween 2 featured that, and certainly the in Halloween 2 when you have Michael Myers kind of gliding around the neighborhood and with a point of view kind of thing, I thought they didn't use that at all in this movie. And the other thing they didn't use, which I thought actually made Michael Myers the scariest for me in the first film in Halloween 2, was him slow walking after victims. The chase scenes, and he doesn't do that at all in this movie. He doesn't slow walk after anyone. So even when you've got Alison running, trying to get away from the police car at the end of the movie to get to her grandmother's house, rather than taking the opportunity to have Michael Myers slowly walking after her through the woods, which would have been really creepy, they don't do that. And I quite understand. It just doesn't. I don't know. It kind of it feels like they were saying that they were mega fans of John Carpenter's original, and they kind of wanted to do away with all the sequels, including, of course, Halloween 2. But we could argue to the cows come home, literally, or the pumpkins come home, about whether Michael Myers is meant to be man or monster. Is he really human flesh and blood, or some kind of wraith? What is he? And I always come down to the side that Michael Myers, as John Carpenter and Deborah Hill said, and originally that he was meant to be this kind of force of nature, this kind of almost ghostly, the Shape. This idea that he wasn't quite real, he was somehow supernatural. Or possessed of some kind of supernatural ability. And in this, they're kind of poo-pooing that. But you also then have him burning to death at the end of the movie and coming back for the sequel. So what are they trying to say with Michael Myers? I'm not quite sure, and I'm not sure they've really found the right footing with that. For me personally, when I heard they were going back to the Halloween of 1978, I thought it would be an update. Obviously, it needs to be updated, it needs to be fresh. But I thought they would go back and he would be more of the kind of this kind of phantom. They kind of, did I see him or didn't I see him? Is that the full moon outside the window? Is that Michael Myers' face? That kind of thing. And they kind of played around with that a bit, but not to how my liking really. And I thought, the whole thing with the kind of the doctor who turns out to be it's a fun twist, but it's a bit unlikely. There was, I don't know, it's seeing Michael Myers as this kind of, you don't see his full face, but you see him as this basically shambling 60-something man with a white beard. It's like Father Christmas on the rampage, which of course there's been lots of slasher movies with that. But a couple of things. One of the little notes I made that made me laugh was the scene at the garage where he goes to get his mask back. Did you notice when the male podcaster looks over at the Jesus truck and there's an old lady sat in the front and she does this kind of side eye. She kind of looks as if she's almost like as if she's saying, "Look over there," and like warning about this creepy man. But it doesn't come to anything. It's kind of strange. There's just little touches like that, and. Things like Michael Myers doing that whole thing of dropping the teeth onto the floor in the bathroom stall where the other podcasters, on the loo. And, again, I'm thinking, is that something that Michael Myers of Halloween 1 and 2 would have done? I don't know. It's more like something Michael Myers of Rob Zombie's movies would have done. So I'm backwards and forwards with this movie. I think there's a lot of it to like. I agree with you, Erik. The last half an hour is fantastic. It works really, really well. I think that whole cat and mouse thing is really good. But there's stuff in it that's just it doesn't. It's almost like it's saying we want to be better than all the other Halloween sequels, but there are things in there that simply aren't better than some of the sequels. I mean, another example would have been I was thinking when the sheriff has got the doctor and the granddaughter in the police car, and they run down Michael Myers on the road. But I was thinking, it's another Ben Tramer thing, surely there would have been lessons learned from running over Ben Tramer.
But that happened in Halloween 2, which this is ignoring.
Well, yes, that's true. But I was also thinking, if this whole town was obsessed with Michael Myers, wouldn't there be loads of Michael Myers lookalikes in Haddonfield on Halloween night?
Yep, true.
So, I don't know. There's just things like that. Overall, it's not a film that I think I would want to revisit that often. I think Halloween 1 and 2... and I agree. Actually, Halloween H2O I think is more fun. It doesn't take itself so seriously, and I think the kind of slightly lofty ideals about trauma and kind of mob mentality and things like that. I kind of, we're seeing in modern horror movies. Actually, so we talked about Candyman last time. I know it's kind of controversial, but we were saying about how sometimes they're taking these elements and modern issues, but being very heavy-handed with them. And I feel that they're doing that, but you can't lose can't lose focus on the fact that this is a Halloween movie that is meant to be a bit fun as well. And I think at some points that was missing in this. So it's kind of, I'm hoping they found their footing with this. And I know the filmmakers said that they were going to see the reaction to when this came out and would make changes accordingly for any sequels. But like you say, advanced word on Halloween Kills doesn't sound like that's happened, but let's see. I don't know. It sounds like Halloween Kills is going to be more brutal than this one. So, yeah.
All valid points, and I would agree with you. Where the shape drops the teeth over the bathroom stall door felt very un-Michael Myers-ish. It felt too thought through to be Michael Myers, because he feels more of an impulsive character, almost like a goldfish with no memory or something. He just seems to sort of drift from one bit to the other without thinking. But it just wasn't to my taste, as you said.
Like a shark, isn't he? He's more like a shark he just smells blood and just goes over it. Although, having said that, in the original Halloween, he dresses up in the bed sheet, doesn't he?
True, yeah.
But that with the teeth wasn't really playful. Because I think with that whole thing, with the creepy thing with the bed sheet, was almost kind of weirdly childlike, wasn't it? It was almost like a child playing a trick. But in this, and of course he is older, but he's still, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see, because it seems like they can't explain him just simply being a man. I mean, how on earth did he survive that fire?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
Are they actually going to go down a supernatural angle in Halloween Ends, which I think is, they seem to be kept it very much close to their chest with what they're doing, because I've seen lots of obviously reports of Halloween Kills, but Halloween Ends, it seems, I'm not entirely sure where they're going with this, but I kind of feel, where can they go really, apart from into slightly more supernatural?
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention was that of the teen, I was dissing kind of the teen characters, but I did, like you, I liked the babysitter character and her interactions with her babysittee, Julian. I thought he was a great character as well. It's not often kid characters sort of, are watchable for me in these types of movies, but he was very watchable because he's clever and witty, but also not obnoxious. So I thought his character was fun. I wonder if he'll be back in Halloween Kills. Joseph, what are your thoughts on Halloween 2018?
Well, this movie has way too many useless characters just kind of standing around doing nothing. You also have the podcaster thing. I kind of agree with Justin on this. I don't mind the idea that there would be this true crime podcast going around trying to get information on Michael Myers, but they don't really do anything with it. Their only focus here is to show up, offer some dialogue about, who Michael Myers is, and then to get killed just so he can get his mask back. There's no real oomph there. And I don't find all the trauma stuff, particularly engaging with the Laurie character. I find it just kind of takes her from this, obviously she's older, so she's going to change some, but it's like in the original, she was just kind of this, this girl next door type, and then she sprung into action when it was necessary. And now it's like she's just, she's the Terminator, and there's no vulnerability there. I mean, she's had 40 years to prepare to, kill Michael Myers. That's fine and dandy, but I don't know. I like the vulnerability factor in these films, and that's very much missing here. And they try to pass that on to Judy Greer's character and the granddaughter character, but I just found both of those characters insufferable, especially Judy Greer. I'm sorry, I think a lot of people liked her character, but I found her like nails on a chalkboard grating every time she opened her mouth. I don't know. The Strode women they felt like an afterthought here, and they didn't know how to handle them correctly. And it was very disappointing. I do like a lot of the scenes where they kind of call back to, the original Halloween, and to a lesser extent, the sequels. The scene where he goes through the house and he picks up the hammer and he kills the woman. I thought that was really well done. I like the scene where they're out just showing a lot of trick-or-treaters and the 3 kids pass by in the Halloween 3 Season of the Witch costumes from Shamrock. I thought that was kind of cool. But for me, it just feels like this film wants to reference all those films, and yet it also wants to totally ignore them at the same time. And that's a big no-no. It's like we'll borrow from these films, but we won't acknowledge them. And it just feels cheap to me. I don't know. The movie's almost like an hour and 45 minutes, and it's a little too long for a Halloween movie as well. I found by the time they do get to the cat and mouse stuff in Laurie's castle, as it were, I just felt like I was waiting too long to get to there, and all the stuff I had to kind of endure to get to that point was just kind of ho-hum. I hated the Dr. Sartain character. I think that was just a stupid idea. Just to have a twist in there is totally unnecessary. I mean, there were a million other ways for Michael Myers to escape, him being this kind of, boogeyman. They could have come up with some other kind of different reason for him to escape, but they just threw this Dr. Sartain character in there just to kind of give this false sense of intrigue, and it just didn't work for me. And the whole time, the one thing I was laughing about is like the whole time I'm watching Michael Myers kill people, I can't get the image of him maskless out of my head, because they show a lot of shots of him like from the like profile shots, so you get a decent glimpse of his face, and it's like this old man with like salt and pepper hair. And so I'm just sitting there thinking it's like dad Michael Myers. He's like someone's dad. And I just felt like I was watching some old man who's got to go spend some time with his kids or his grandkids in a few hours, go around killing people. So I was kind of laughing at that, but overall, I don't know. I'm not a big Halloween fan, honestly. I love the first film and I love the second film. But after that, I just checked out. I mean, bits and pieces of the sequels I like, and there's bits and pieces that I like here. But as a whole movie, I just felt that it's probably worth one watch, but I'm just not interested in ever seeing it again, if I'm honest. So take from that what you will, I guess.
Better than the Rob Zombie ones, though, yeah?
Well, yeah, it's better than those. I'll give it that.
One thing about the podcasters that I thought was strange was, would they really be allowed to enter this sanatorium or whatever it is and taunt Michael Myers with the mask like that and shout at him? Would the authorities let them do that?
And that's what I was thinking. They get these people chained up on this roof of this building. It's like they got all these like psychopaths chained up. I'm like, what kind of fucking sanitarium is this where they just chain these people up on the roof of somewhere?
I know. And then they were sort of saying, and he's going to a much worse place than this. I was thinking, are there worse places than that?
Guildford.
Okay, it was a lovely place, Eric. But the scene where the father and son drive up and see the bus has crashed, I thought that was probably the best, one of the most suspenseful scenes in the movie. I thought that was really well handled. When they went out looking, and Michael Myers was out there, but you didn't see him. I just thought that was really well handled, and it's a shame. I don't know, the shame there wasn't more of that kind of that kind of element. It shows that they could make suspenseful scenes. And I like the scenes of Michael Myers going to the house and he kills the woman with the hammer, and then he goes into the other house and kills a woman who's looking through. So it feels, he's on this kind of rampage. But to what effect? I mean, what's he doing? Just working his way through the houses? But then he wants to get to Laurie Strode. So why isn't he going after Laurie Strode? What's he actually doing? So it felt a little bit directionless.
Do they ever? Sorry, I was just going to ask you. Do they ever really say why he's after Laurie Strode. I mean, I know they nixed the whole brother-sister angle here, which I also thought was kind of, the way they do it is kind of insulting, but do they ever give like a specific reason why he fixates on her?
They don't really, do they?
No, I was wondering, does he fixate on her though? Because she sort of goes after him initially and then he sort of retaliates, is kind of what I picked up from Halloween 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's targeting her initially, is he?
No, maybe not. Yeah, I guess I could see that.
Yeah, because he's just kind of going from house to house, isn't he? But I know in Halloween Kills, it's been suggested that he's on a path back to his own house. Because I think in Halloween Kills, he goes back and there's a couple living in his old house.
Not to get into Halloween Kills because we will soon, but I'm getting the vibe that they're trying to make the Michael Myers character the hero in the sequel, and they're making the whole mob mentality the antagonist in the sequel. That's what it feels like.
The real monsters.
Yeah, that's where it feels like they're going with this. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see if I'm right.
Well, they did the mob mentality thing a bit in Halloween 4 as well.
Well, it is going to be interesting to see, isn't it? Because you've got like trilogies, especially ones that are kind of self-defined in so much you're going to have a beginning, middle, and an end. And Halloween Kills is very much going to be the middle because there's going to be another sequel. So there's no even teasing with that. So whether or not it's that in itself can be quite a difficult position to have, can't it? Sort of like the difficult middle child.
Justin, you were talking about the social issues that were prominent in this film, and if you ask me, I think they've always been prominent in slasher films, especially when you have the strong final girl type. But like you said, those films knew that they were slasher films above all, and so they were kind of deftly weaved into the narrative. Where here is it feels like they're just beating you over the head with a tack hammer, saying, "Hey, look how aware we are of current social standings." It just feels like they're forgetting that it's a popcorn thriller.
I think that is the main thing, because I've got no problem with issues being explored in horror movies, because in fact, actually, out of every genre, horror has been used as a springboard for exploring social issues, far more probably than any other apart from social issue movies. So I've got no problem with that. But I think sometimes, again, it's kind of remembering it's a popcorn movie. It's a horror movie that's meant to be like a Halloween treat. So it's kind of like, where do you go? Where do you go with that? And I think, say Jamie Lee Curtis's character was so joyless, and so her character was somebody who'd had every ounce of joy sucked out of her life. And she'd been completely kind of obsessed with Michael Myers for 40 years. And on paper, that probably looks really good as a good thing. And Jamie Lee Curtis probably thought, this is a really interesting thing for me to play. I'm behind this 100%. But does it make for a fun character on screen? And I would argue it doesn't. Would it be more fun to see Jamie Lee Curtis as a kind of a ditzy, kind of like fun grandma who was baking fairy cakes, and then suddenly Michael Myers turned back up, or somebody who was the mayor of Haddonfield, or something like that, something that was a bit more, I don't know, different. I did like the bit in the restaurant where she goes in, which is probably the most awkward sort of family gathering in a restaurant scene for a long time. She goes in and drinks that glass of wine, which I thought was a nice throwback to Halloween H2O.
I was just watching it, I was like, that's something Justin would do.
Always ruining family gatherings, yeah.
It's just kind of strange, isn't it? Because I think also, I think for us to warm to the daughter, that she's kind of like basically grandma, or they call her grandmother in this. And I think I've seen people saying why, the whole grandmother thing was weird. But I think the whole idea behind that, saying it rather than calling grandma, was that it was supposed to show that they didn't have a close relationship with her, which I think kind of makes sense. But the daughter comes across quite cold towards her, doesn't she? Like she's just had enough of her shit and just and makes up stories to keep her away from her granddaughter.
Yes, and I hated not only did I dislike the Judy Greer character, but I hated her husband character. He really got on my nerves.
Well, you're probably delighted when he got killed then.
Yes, I was actually cheering when he died. So there you go.
See, I don't mind the daughter and granddaughter. I mean, I don't find them eminently watchable or anything, but I'm not, I don't object to them either. It is sad that Laurie is this kind of obsessed, joyless character. In H2O, she was kind of in the same position, but she was, as I said, she had the ability to smile. She was having that relationship with Adam Arkin, and she had a son, and she had a career. Whilst in the background, she was troubled and haunted by Michael Myers still. And I think they should have gone that route with this one. They didn't have to go for as you said, the trauma angle might have looked good on paper and made the film seem really worthy, but this is a popcorn movie. They don't need to, go that route really with the Laurie Strode character, I didn't think. And I'm assuming that it just gets worse for the next two films because, if she was, that unhappy after 40 years, I presume this trilogy takes place within the same week, all within the same week, or, like Friday the 13th, 2, 3, and 4. So, she's probably not going to be terribly cheerful in the sequels either.
There won't be a song and dance number.
I'm sure there won't. No.
When they get her back in 40 years and she's in some nursing home, see how they do with that.
What I am looking forward to in Halloween Kills quite a lot is the returning characters from the first one, because I've got Kyle Richards back as Lindsay Wallace, and although there are different actors, we've got Tommy Doyle and Lonnie Elam back as well. So we'll get to see if Lonnie Elam did graduate from the 5th grade, or whatever the line was from the first one. So that'll be fun to see those characters. And Nancy Stevens is back as Marion Chambers, although she did return and get killed in H2O as well.
Hey, you know what this means? Since this is a different timeline, they can bring back some of the hospital staff. Like they can bring back Bud, since he's alive now. Yeah, he's alive now.
Pamela Susan Shoop, who has the best name ever.
I'm sure Leo Rossi could use the paycheck.
Mm. Well, the trouble is, none of those characters in this universe exist, do they? Because although it's never explained explicitly, is it, in this, that if Halloween 2 never happened, then Michael Myers was apprehended at the end of the original movie, wasn't he? And then taken away.
Yeah.
Presumably. So
that's another thing I was going to ask you guys. At the end of Halloween, he gets shot 6 times, falls out a window, and he disappears. But did they explain how they apprehended him, or did they just kind of gloss over that? Because they didn't even reference him getting shot.
Loomis had a bad aim.
Is that the actual?
No, that's me making it up. But
okay, wow. Yeah, so I don't know. It's like they almost feels like they kind of erased that last bit where he falls out the window, unless I missed it.
No, absolutely. And also the most chilling thing at the end of Halloween, was the fact that the idea that when he's still out there, isn't he? Basically, he's gone, but he's still out there. And then the sequel saying, the 2018 film is saying he kind of got away and then got picked up by the police straight away and taken off to an asylum for the next 40 years, which kind of dilutes the kind of chilling ending of the original Halloween quite significantly, I think. I don't know. I mean, I would have, if I was doing it, I would have kept the sister element. I know it was John Carpenter came up with it after drinking a 6-pack and thinking, how the hell am I going to write? What can I do to add? Because the original Halloween was such a fantastic movie. It's my favorite movie of all time. And it's so, because it really is, there's no story really to it at all. It's not a story-driven piece. It's a skeleton of a script really, but it's all done so artfully and gracefully and terrifyingly that it kind of comes together. And so you just have to add meat to the bones for the sequel. But if they're sort of, because I love Halloween 2. I mean, Halloween 2 is very much of its time, 1981, and of course, which is the golden year for slasher movies as far as I'm concerned. So of course I love that, and it's not as good a film as Halloween, but I would argue that Halloween 2 is scarier than Halloween 2018 by a long shot. Then, you've got the ending where Michael Myers is, the hospital explodes and Michael Myers walks out and he's he's burnt up and all this kind of thing. And they, at the end he's supposed to be dead, but you don't know. And I'm thinking, well, but then at the end of this movie, they do exactly the same thing, don't they? Really end the movie by burning him alive in this pit, this trap. And he comes out again, and so I just think it's a little bit confused because I mean, just kind of going into some background just very quickly, just kind of because I know that John Carpenter wasn't happy with the Rob Zombie movies. He thought that it took everything in the completely wrong direction. So he kind of the stuff I've seen him talking about this movie, and he said he described Michael Myers again as a force of nature, and he says someone who's almost supernatural. And I think this again goes back to how Michael Myers was originally what Deborah Hill and John Carpenter originally envisaged the Michael Myers character to be, is this kind of like kind of a phantom, the shape. And although Laurie Strode calls him the Shape in this, he doesn't really it doesn't feel like the Shape to me. But I know that Danny McBride, when he was writing this, and they said that they were massive fans of the original, and they wanted to basically go back to the kind of Carpenter approach of the Halloween movies. And I remember at the time thinking, well, that sounds fantastic. But then when I read what he said about it, and this is a little quote from him, he says, I think we're trying to take it back to what's so good about the original. It was just very simple and just achieved that level of horror that wasn't turning Michael Myers into some being that couldn't be killed. And I'm thinking, but that's exactly what they've done, isn't it? You know, and for me, what's scary is the idea of, kind of a Jason Voorhees or a Michael Myers that you just simply can't kill. You know, and I think it's kind of, whether I'm not going to go in that direction or not, I don't know, but hopefully they will. But have we got any other background that you want to? I've got a bit here.
Well, you were talking about Danny McBride and him writing this. The only really thing I have, and it's not even background, is like he did a show right before he was involved with this called Vice Principals. It was on HBO, and it was a 2-season show. And at the end of the first season, spoiler alert, he gets shot by someone who's wearing a school mascot uniform. And so he spends a lot of the second season kind of holed up in this house out in the woods. It's basically like a fortress, just like the Laurie Strode character. I mean, his whole house is booby-trapped. He's got the security cameras. A lot of the same stuff that Laurie Strode does in this film. So I'm thinking as soon as that show ended, he took a lot of that stuff from that and injected it into the Halloween DNA. I mean, it's unmistakably the same, almost, like down to the letter.
Well, that's funny. I haven't seen that, but that's an interesting observation. So, I mean, it's interesting that I know David Gordon Green. They're kind of known for comedy, aren't they? I mean, this isn't a funny film, and thankfully they didn't do like a scary movie send up of Halloween, because I think that would have been, we already had that with Busta Rhymes, didn't we?
Motherfucking Kentucky Fried Chicken, motherfucker. I'm supposed to be in the kitchen.
I had an idea for the sequel that I don't think they're going to go ahead with, but how about this? It's the following Halloween, and Laurie and her daughter and granddaughter meet up with this hot new hunk in town, and his name is Meyer Michelson. He turns out to be, get this, Michael Myers' son. You see? Myers Michelson.
Wow.
See what I did there? Clever,
It's kind of like the I Still Know What You Did Last Summer of the Halloween series.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I think that could be, well, where are you going to go? Because presumably, I'm going to talk a little bit about the box office, but Halloween 2018, I think, was the one of the highest grossing horror movies of all time, wasn't it? Slash movies of all time, adjusted for inflation. So it made a huge amount of money for the studio that released it. And so at the end, when Halloween ends, we've all been around the block enough times to know that slash movie franchises never end unless they go into courtrooms like the Friday the 13th franchise, and then maybe Jason Voorhees might kind of come back from the ashes of the battle between.
Interesting that you mentioned that, Justin, because Victor Miller just won that lawsuit. I think that was in the news yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that, but then it said that it still kind of doesn't mean that that anything's going to be greenlit anytime soon for Friday the 13th. Because I mean, the last Friday the 13th was 2009, wasn't it? So we're getting sort of, well over a decade since the last Friday the 13th movie, which seems crazy because they just print money with those movies. But any other backgrounds? Anything else, Erik?
Well, it was filmed in January and February of 2018, so it was shot and released within the same year. Apparently, the rough cut of the film was 135 minutes, which is, 2 hours 15, so about half an hour longer than the final released one. It had a different ending, and they did some reshoots to in June of that year to that one. So apparently the original ending had a sort of knife fight between Laurie and Michael Myers in the woods, and you can see tiny glimpses of that in early trailers for the film. And that is about all I was able to get. Oh, one other thing, and this is the song we're going to be playing out with later. There is a version of, do you remember Laurie walking away from Michael, unbeknownst to her, in the first film, and she's singing the song, I Wish I Had You All Alone? which was something that Jamie Lee Curtis improvised on the spot for John Carpenter at the time. Well, they actually made it into a song, and it's included on the soundtrack of Halloween 2018. It's performed by Heavy Young Heathens, and it's called Close to Me. And Jamie Lee Curtis and John Carpenter both get a writing credit on it. So yeah, that's the song we'll be playing out with. But I thought that was a fun little throwback to the first film.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, thank you, Eric. Joseph, how about you? Anything else you want to add?
No, that's all I had for this week.
Okay, I just kind of one thing I was going to touch on quickly, because one of the fascinating things, and I know, Eric, you've got the book, haven't you? Is it Making Halloween or the Lost? What's the one with all the unproduced Halloween scripts?
Yeah, Taking Shape 2. Because there was Taking Shape, which looked at all the Halloween movies and behind the scenes, and then Taking Shape 2 was all about the sequels that never were.
Because it's fascinating, isn't it, about what? Because I mean, the amount. I mean, it's not just with the Halloween films, but many franchises and many. I mean, I'm sure there's a million unproduced sort of manuscripts out there. But obviously, after when Rob Zombie released his Halloween reboot in 2017, and it was a big financial success. And again, it's not my cup of tea, but it did very well. And he was very hesitant to return for Halloween 2, which he did against his better judgment, and then regretted it, I think, because the Weinsteins were very, very kind of hands-on with that.
Yeah, I heard that about the Weinsteins.
Yes, well, yes, we won't go there. But he said apparently after 2 days after the release of Halloween 2, and again, because presumably it made money, not as much money as ever they were going to do. Do you remember they're going to do Halloween 3D?
Yeah, with Todd Farmer and Patrick Lussier, or whatever his name is pronounced. Yeah.
Yeah, so and it was meant to sort of pick up at the end of the 2009 movie, but was meant to go back more to the kind of John Carpenter-esque feel of the original movies. So I mean, I'm pretty sure Deborah Hill, they talked about either making Halloween or Halloween 2 in 3D, and decided against it because it was too difficult at the time. But I mean, if you had like a John Carpenter style Halloween movie with Michael Myers just kind of looming into shape from like the famous shot of Laurie Strode at the top of the staircase at the end of Halloween, and he just comes out of the blackness behind her. Things like that in 3D would be fantastic. The whole depth of field thing, and would have been great. But that never happened. Apparently there was because Scout Taylor Compton, they wanted her to come back as Laurie Strode, and bless her, but we're not a fan. It's not a fan. I mean, Scout Taylor Compton's done some great stuff, but none of us, I think it's fair to say, are fans of the Rob Zombie's Laurie Strode, are we, essentially? And I think it's probably more his vision of Laurie Strode than maybe Scout Taylor Compton's. But she didn't want to come back. So that kind of fell apart. But one thing I didn't realise was that Weinstein wanted to make Halloween 3D like a found footage movie. Because you remember there was talk, wasn't there, the Friday 13th, they were going to do a found footage Friday 13th. There was that whole thing about, so at the time, obviously it was a time when Paranormal Activity and all those kind of movies were kind of very popular. So it kind of makes sense that they would have gone down that route. But again, that just didn't happen. So I think it's kind of I think there were other kind of iterations through this before we got to the thing. But one thing I did find interesting was that there was, if you remember, some controversy at the time about Danielle Harris being involved or not involved in this movie, because I think possibly before they announced they were going to ignore everything past the original, that kind of fans were kind of keen to see kind of what Jamie Lloyd's character reappearing in the movie. And apparently she did reach out and say that she'd be available. And apparently some of the early scripts or versions of the script for Halloween 2018 actually had her character in it. So, but obviously they decided not to, they basically retconned everything back to the first movie. So I think she was very disappointed not to have been in that, but there you go. So as far as kind of what kind of consensus, I'd be interested to hear what the consensus was on the Facebook group. Joseph, do you have that to hand?
Yeah, from 88 comments, Tom Wilson writes, "At this point, all I'm after is a serviceable entry. Ooh. I can't understand the hate when you consider how much the franchise has been dragged through the mud. It's a solid film, and I'm looking forward to Halloween Kills. Again, that was from Tom Wilson. Cinema du Meep, our friend Michael, writes, Halloween H2O did it better in 1998. This movie was totally unnecessary and unravels the timeline for no good reason other than cashing in on a lucrative intellectual property. Boo. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you enjoy the show and want to support what we do, consider heading over to patreon.com/The Hysteria Continues. Highest pledge wins a weekend in Vermont with Erik.
Ooh.
Yeah. Our email address is thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com.
But isn't Vermont, is that that's a suburb outside of Dublin?
It's a state. It's a state.
No, I was just saying, but have to be a very high pledge.
Yes.
Although I have heard Eric's cheap. So it's €1.50 and a chunky Kit Kat.
$1.75.
It's got to be the whole Kit Kat. You can't take a bite out of it. Erik has to have the whole thing.
Well, apparently I've heard he can take the whole thing. So, but Erik, talking of taking the whole thing, let's see if we take the whole thing and if we laugh at your joke of the week.
It's my joke of the week. It's so great and fantastic.
What did Laurie say when the shape grabbed the side of her head? Michael, my ears. Michael, my ears. See, Joseph liked it. It made him cough. It was so good.
Yeah, that's funny.
Very good. Well, talking of Michael Myers grabbing Laurie Strode, because I always remember watching it again. I remember when I first saw it, when Michael Myers puts his hand through the door and grabs Laurie Strode's head and bashes her face into the door like 3 or 4 times, and she has no visible outcome to that at all. She doesn't have a bloody nose or anything, does she?
She's protected by a thick layer of Activia.
Well, maybe she's supernatural. Maybe that'll be the revelation.
Well, if she's really his sister, then she would be supernatural.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
And now a word from our friends.
We're the Remedial Film Class Podcast.
With Travis.
And George.
And I'm Dan. And George hasn't seen any movies.
I haven't seen any movies.
But we're here to fix that. You know that feeling you get when you show your favorite movie to somebody who's never seen it before? Or even better, that feeling you get when someone else shows you their favorite movie and you get to talk about it?
We show George movies he's never seen.
We talk about them in depth.
We give context, analysis, and other insights. So join the Remedial Film Class Podcast on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get podcasts.
And take me to school. I'm Kevin Jones.
And I'm Chris Moore.
And we started the Homos on Haunted Hill so that we can throw a party. A horror film party. It'll be quite amusing.
There'll be madmen and chainsaws and ghosts and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
Wow. We, of course, are going to be... Halloween Kills is going to be out at cinemas and on streaming in a few weeks' time. Or in about a week's time when you hear this, I imagine. So we will be covering... In fact, is that the next one we're doing, Halloween Kills?
Yep.
Right. Okay. So we will be, as long as we can all see it, we will be reviewing Halloween Kills on the next show. And in case you are wondering, we will be going back to our beloved 70s and 80s relatively soon. So, but we've had a bit of a run of newer movies, and I hope you've enjoyed those. It's good to be, were we ever relevant?
Yeah.
No. No, but so it's going to be interesting to see, and it's almost reviewing in real time. So join us for that. But we have a little bit of feedback, don't we?
Yes, I have a bit of feedback here, and it is from Rob Balducci, of course. Rob. And he says, "Hi Justin, Erik, Joseph and Nathan. Just finished listening to your Murder Rock and Malignant episodes. I'd seen Murder Rock about 10 years ago and it didn't impress me, but upon rewatch I really enjoyed it. The cast was perfect with the great Ray Lovelock and Claudio Castanelli, not to mention the stunningly beautiful Olga Karlatos. I agree that the lack of gore was a disappointment, but overall I loved it. Malignant, on the other hand, I thought it was pretty unbearable. The first half felt like a cookie-cutter Conjuring, Insidious, Sinister ripoff, and then when the twist happened, if you can call it that, it just got stupid. I found myself laughing at parts that I wasn't supposed to, especially the painfully idiotic "I was adopted" scene, and the running time was way too long. The over-the-top violence was okay, but employed way too much CGI, and the killer's long, stringy hair over her face appearance just looked like a rip-off of The Grudge, The Ring, or some other much better film. Really looking forward to your Woman in Black episode, as it is a film I've wanted to check out for some time, and now I have no excuse not to. Also, looking forward to your Halloween 2018 coverage. Keep up the great work, from Rob Balducci. P.S. I miss Nathan. I miss Nathan too. I've nobody to talk possibly in Michigan with.
No, 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 no. Why? Why?
It's been built up too long for you, Erik.
It has. I need to explode.
Well, wait until the podcast's finished, please. So, is there anything left to say, apart from obviously we're covering Halloween Kills next time?
And we already know what we're playing out with, so there's nothing left to say.
We are just about to record our Halloween 3 Patreon episode, so that's going to be a fun one to discuss. Obviously, the bastard stepchild of the Halloween series. So let's see what we think of it. So tune in for that. But otherwise, we'll catch you next time, and we'll be heading back to Haddonfield for Halloween Kills. So stay safe, enjoy your 30 Days of Horror for Halloween if you're doing that. And we'll catch you next time on Hysteria Continues. So say goodbye to the good people.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I would hold you close, close.